Hi everyone, welcome back. Today I'm going to try and preserve this purple fountain grass over the winter, and I'm going to dig up my begonia corms to overwinter them as well. Today is October 6th. I'm up here in Calgary. These are not going to survive the winter here for sure. So I'm going to do an experiment. I'm going to pull this planter apart, take out my begonia corms, and bring my grass inside under some grow lights for the winter. So let's get this guy pulled apart first of all. All right, got a begonia out at least. So there's not much to it actually. I'm going to slowly work away the soil, and it's going to be kind of like a bulb, what you're going to see. This whole plant is coming from just this little guy here. Oh, he's grown since the last time, since I put him in. It almost looks like a bird's nest. Okay, so I'm going to cut away the foliage. And I'm going to shake as much dirt off as I can. And I'm going to let it dry. It's going to take a while. So I'm going to take that and I'll dig out my other one, and I'm going to let this one dry on some newspaper in a cool garage. I don't want it to freeze, so I have to make sure that it's going to be warm enough not to freeze. I just want it to dry. I'm going to give it about a week, I think. Keep the dirt shaken off, and when that one's ready, I'll do another video about how to store it. But in the meantime, I gotta get my grass out of the planter without damaging too many of its roots. There we are. This is just some styrofoam filler I put at the bottom of the planter to take up some space, so I wouldn't have to use as much dirt. Oh, would you look at that? The roots grew into it. Huh. It doesn't have a big root system. Well, very interesting. Would you look at that? Obviously, I'm not going to use that next year. I'll fill it up with something else. All right, so there's my root system. Now that I know how much I've got, I can choose my proper pot size. This one maybe? Nope. This one? That's the one. So I'll fill that up with some soil. I'm going to cut this top off. Where I left my clippers. I'm just trying to keep it alive. I don't need it to grow big. All this stuff will grow fresh next spring. Oh, that's a shame. I suppose a person could dry that if they're artsy, crafty. All right, so there we go. I'm going to top that up with some soil. And then that's going to stay wet and growing in my grow lights, under my grow lights. These are different than the bulbs of the begonias or dahlias. All right, so I'm going to get that filled up. I'm going to give it a water and bring it in. And hopefully that'll work. I'll do an update next spring. See you later. Hi everyone, welcome back. Today is part 2 of my begonia tuber storage. A couple of weeks ago I had dug these up, cut off the stems to prep them for the winter. I want to save them and replant them next spring. So this is what they look like after a couple of weeks of just laid out flat in a cool, dry, dark space in my basement. So I've got them labeled so I can remember what color's what. So if you have more than one color, that's a good idea. So now I want to prep them in a box just to get them properly stored for the winter. So I have to take off these stems here. So what you're going to do is just snap them off, and if they snap off easily, then you know they're ready. This one is really, it still almost looks like it has a fresh leaf on it, still growing. It's not snapping off very easily. I think this one needs to dry a bit more. As a matter of fact, I'm going to cut it down a little bit so it can dry faster. This one I'm not going to store quite yet. It's not quite dry enough. Some people say leave them for 2-3 weeks, even up to a month, just sitting here like this in the dark and cool to give them time to dry and cure properly for storage. These ones, however, are good to go. Nice and dry. I'm going to just carefully brush off some of the old dirt. Don't wash it off. You know, they still need a little bit of dryness on it. This next stage here is I'm going to give it a sprinkle with some sulfur dust. This helps to stop any mold growth, fungus growth. So I'm just going to put a little bit of dust here in a bag. Drop my tuber in, give it a shake. And now it's just slightly coated with some sulfur powder. I'll do that. Here, this one is ready to go as well. Oopsies. See, I had a stem that was ready to come off. Don't want to lose my color tag. Might be a good idea to do this in a better ventilated area than what I'm working in. All right, so I'm just going to wrap my tag back on it. So I'm going to do that for the rest, and then we'll come back and put them in the box. So now I have my box, just a shallow box, cardboard box. I've got it lined with some newspaper. And you can just use newspaper if you want, or you can line it with vermiculite or peat moss, or even use just a plastic, or not a plastic bag, a paper bag. Just make sure that they each have their own space. You're not crowding them. And then I have some vermiculite here that I'm just going to cover them with. You want to keep them dry and cool over the winter. If they're too warm, they could start to shrivel up too much. If they're too cold, then they could start to, they might not survive too terribly cold. The literature says between 5 and 10 degrees Celsius is a good place to do it. Unheated, or I mean a heated garage over the winter, or a cool spot in your basement that's dark and cool. So these are good to go. These are a different color, so I'm going to put them in separately in a separate bag so I don't forget which color is what. When these are dry, I'm going to add them to the box. They're not quite ready yet. Then what I'm going to do is just top them up with the newspaper over top. I want them to be able to breathe, and then I'm just going to close up the box, not tightly, not sealed, just like that, and I'm going to keep it in my basement, cold room. And I'll check it every month or so to make sure there's no rot in there, or mold growing, or if or just general health of the bulb over the winter. And then in early spring, late winter, early spring, I'll start to pot them up, and hopefully we'll get some good growth next spring. All right, that's about it. Thanks again for joining me. Bye-bye. Oh, and by the way, here's the grass I pulled out of those planters. I have them indoors, planted up in some soil under some grow lights.